Manipulation rarely enters through the front door. It arrives in disguise, friendly, curious, sometimes even flattering. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He knew that the most effective manipulators don't use force, they use questions. And not just any questions, but ones designed to access your insecurities, disarm your intuition, and rewire your behavior. Let's be clear, not every personal question is manipulative, but there's a pattern to look for certain phrases, tones, and intentions that reveal more than what's being asked. Jung referred to this as psychological projection through inquiry. In essence, the manipulator isn't just gathering information, they're trying to implant doubt, control, or compliance. One of the most common manipulative openings is, "Why are you being so sensitive?" At first glance, it sounds like curiosity, but dig deeper and you'll find a hidden accusation. It doesn't invite conversation, it shuts it down. It reframes your legitimate feelings as overreactions. Jung taught that this is a classic gaslighting maneuver. It shifts the focus from what the other person did to how you responded. Instead of taking responsibility, the manipulator makes your emotional response the problem. And the more you defend your right to feel, the more sensitive you appear. It's a trap. A psychological bind meant to make you question your perception of reality. Jung called this shadow projection. The person asking the question is often uncomfortable with their own emotional intensity, so they disown it and then project it onto you. In doing so, they regain control. You, meanwhile, start to doubt yourself. You wonder, am I too sensitive? Am I overreacting? You stop trusting your gut. That's the goal, because once you stop trusting yourself, you become easier to influence. You start looking to the manipulator for validation, for approval, for reality checking. And the more you do, the more power they hold. Jung warned that when someone repeatedly questions your emotional responses, they're not seeking truth. They're seeking dominance. They want to control not just how you feel, but how you think about how you feel. That's the first step towards psychological submission. It's important to notice how you feel after these interactions. Do you feel smaller, confused, guilty for even speaking up? These are not signs of conflict resolution. They're symptoms of manipulation. A healthy person will ask, "What made you feel that way?" A manipulator will ask, "Why are you so emotional?" The difference is intent. One seeks to understand, the other seeks to control. Carl Jung believed that reclaiming your psychological power begins with awareness. Recognize the question not just by its words, but by the way it makes you feel. That discomfort, it's your psyche telling you something is off. Listen to it. The second manipulative question often slips into conversations with a deceptively gentle tone. Are you sure that's what happened? At face value, this sounds like an invitation to double-check your memory, right? But when asked repeatedly, especially after you've shared a painful or vulnerable experience, it becomes a psychological tactic. Jung would call this a subtle erosion of subjective truth. The manipulator isn't just questioning your memory. They're questioning your ability to interpret reality itself. Why is this so dangerous? Because memory isn't just about facts. It's tied to emotion, context, and identity. When someone pokes at your recollection in moments of vulnerability, they plant seeds of self-doubt. You begin second-guessing not just the event, but your ability to perceive anything accurately. Jung warned that such patterns often emerge from people who need control, those who fear accountability or difference in perspective. Let's be clear, asking for clarity is not manipulation, but when someone asks, "Are you sure?" not to understand, but to invalidate, especially when done repeatedly, it becomes gaslighting. They want you to hesitate, to retract, to self-correct in their favor. And it works, because in that moment of doubt, you may retreat, soften your stance, or even apologize for something that genuinely hurt you. Suddenly, the issue is no longer their behavior. It's your faulty perception. And once you accept that framework, you give up the power to challenge them. Jung described this as a psychic inversion, where the abuser is made into the victim, and the victim is reframed as unstable or confused. It's emotional sleight of hand, and it's devastating. You might find yourself thinking, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. That spiral leads directly into submission. You stop asserting boundaries. You stop asking for clarity. You internalize the belief that your experiences are inherently untrustworthy. This is especially dangerous for people who are empathic, introspective, or trauma-informed people who naturally question themselves before blaming others. Manipulators prey on this. They don't confront directly. They destabilize subtly. Carl Jung believed the antidote to this was inner anchoring. You must know what you saw, what you felt, what it meant to you. That internal compass is your defense. You can still remain open, empathetic, and reflective, but not at the cost of abandoning your own reality. Remember, someone who truly cares will help you make sense of your experience, not unravel it. They won't need to convince you that you're not. The third question may sound caring on the surface, but beneath it lies a manipulative trap. Don't you think you're overthinking this? At first, it feels like a helpful nudge, a reminder not to spiral. But pay attention to the context. If this question is asked when you're expressing genuine concern, unpacking boundaries, or calling out subtle disrespect, it's not about helping you. It's about silencing you. Jung viewed this as the defensive maneuver, an unconscious projection meant to discredit your process. When someone tells you you're overthinking, they're often really saying, I don't want to deal with the discomfort your clarity is creating in me. This tactic is common among manipulators who fear emotional depth. They may present themselves as rational, calm, and objective, but their real issue isn't your overthinking. It's your insight, your sensitivity, your attention to nuance. Carl Jung believed that intuitive types, especially those sensitive to emotional undercurrents, often threaten people who rely on control. So, instead of engaging with the substance of what you're saying, a manipulator attacks the process itself. They reframe your intelligence as anxiety, your discernment as paranoia, your insight as drama. And what happens when you hear this often enough? You begin to self-edit. You stop bringing things up. You talk yourself out of valid instincts. You suppress your analysis to protect the comfort of others. That's not growth, it's suppression. Jung warned about the dangers of repressing one's thinking function. The psyche doesn't just forget what you've seen, it stores it. And when it isn't processed outwardly, it festers inwardly. You become anxious, resentful, confused, not because you're flawed, but because your inner truth has been buried under the weight of someone else's denial. Healthy people don't fear your analysis. They welcome it, even when it's uncomfortable. They might challenge your conclusions, but they won't shame your process. They won't dismiss your insight as pathology. And here's what's most important. You're allowed to think deeply, to notice patterns, to revisit conversations. This is not weakness, it's awareness. Manipulators know this, and that's why they target your introspection. Because as long as you're asking the right questions, they can't maintain control. Jung often said that the most dangerous thing isn't thinking too much, it's thinking too little. In a world of superficiality and avoidance, your depth is not a defect, it's your defense. So the next time someone says, you're overthinking, ask yourself, or am I just finally seeing clearly? Be mistaken. They'll help you feel understood. Another manipulative question often arrives wrapped in concern, but with a sharp edge hidden inside. Why do you always make things about you? This one stings. It weaponizes guilt. It reframes your effort to express yourself as selfishness. And just like that, your attempt at self-advocacy becomes an act of narcissism in their eyes. Jung saw this as a form of psychological inversion. When someone consistently redirects blame or discomfort back onto you, they're using what he called shadow projection. In this case, your desire to share your needs or boundaries triggers something in them. Perhaps their fear of being seen as inadequate or guilty. Rather than face that feeling, they flip the script. Suddenly, your truth-telling becomes ego. Your pain becomes self-centeredness. Your voice becomes the problem. Let's be clear. Talking about your experience is not making it all about you. There's a massive difference between monopolizing a conversation and vulnerably sharing how something affected you. Manipulators collapse those two things on purpose. It gives them a moral high ground, and more importantly, it shuts you down. You might hear this question after setting a boundary, after saying, that hurt me, or I need space, or I don't feel respected. Instead of engaging with your feelings, the manipulator reframes your entire motive. It's not that you're hurt. It's that you're self-absorbed. Not that you need clarity, but that you always want attention. This kind of accusation sticks, especially to empathetic people. You start wondering, am I being selfish? Do I talk about myself too much? Should I just keep quiet? And over time, you begin to shrink. Jung believed that the path to individuation, the process of becoming a whole self, requires confrontation. You must advocate for yourself. You must speak your truth. And people who cannot tolerate that are often projecting their own inability to self-advocate onto you. Here's the distinction. Healthy people might say, hey, I feel like I'm not being heard. Or can we talk about how this affects both of us? That's dialogue. That's mutuality. But manipulators don't want mutuality. They want control. And control is easiest to maintain when you're too ashamed to speak up. So next time someone accuses you of making it all about you, pause, ask, am I sharing from self-awareness or from self-centeredness? And trust your answer. Because Jung taught that the unconscious can only manipulate you when you abandon your own perception. Reclaim it, and you reclaim your power. Now let's talk about one of the most subtle and dangerous manipulative questions. Why can't you just let it go? On the surface, this might sound like advice, But when this question shows up in the middle of an unresolved issue, especially one where your boundaries have been crossed, it becomes a weapon. It's not about peace, it's about erasure. Carl Jung warned against what he called spiritual bypassing, using superficial notions of forgiveness, peace, or positivity to avoid accountability. And this question is a prime example. It reframes your desire for closure or justice as unnecessary drama. Suddenly, your refusal to be mistreated becomes the problem, not the mistreatment itself. This tactic is especially common among people who are conflict avoidant or emotionally immature. They want harmony, but only on their terms. They want things to go back to normal, but without doing the work. So instead of saying, "Let's talk about this," they say, "Can't you just drop it?" And often, they say it with frustration, as if your memory is the enemy. Jung taught that the psyche does not let go through force. It lets go through integration. Meaning must be made. Truth must be spoken. If the wound is still bleeding, letting go is premature. It becomes another layer of suppression. What manipulators want is not healing. They want avoidance. They want you to forget the harm, so they don't have to face it. And if you push back, you're labeled as unforgiving, petty, stuck in the past. But Jung would argue the opposite. He'd say the refusal to let it go prematurely is actually a sign of inner integrity. Because here's the truth, not everything should be let go right away. Some things need to be felt, named, grieved. Some truths demand acknowledgement. Some boundaries deserve reinforcement. And you have the right to take up that space without apology. Ask yourself, is this person asking me to let go because they genuinely want healing? Or because they're uncomfortable with accountability? Are they trying to move forward with me or around me? There's a big difference. People who care about you don't rush your process. They meet you in it. They ask, what do you need to feel complete? Not, when will you get over it? Carl Jung believed that real resolution arises from consciousness, not coercion. And when someone tries to pressure you into premature peace, it's often because your truth is disturbing their illusion. Don't let anyone shame you for wanting closure, for asking hard questions, for needing more time. You're not holding on, you're holding yourself. Let's now zoom out and look at the bigger pattern Jung warned about. The way manipulative questions are designed, not to clarify, but to confuse. Each one, whether it's, why are you so sensitive? Are you sure that's what happened? Why can't you let it go? Serves the same function, to destabilize your inner authority. Carl Jung taught that the most dangerous people are not the ones who scream or threaten. It's those who erode your sense of self from the inside out. And they often do it with charm, subtlety, and questions that seem innocent. But behind those questions is a structure, an agenda. And that agenda is about control. Control over your narrative, control over your boundaries, control over your sense of reality. So how do you protect yourself? Jung believed the answer lies in conscious integration. Knowing your inner world so well that no one else can rewrite it for you. When you've done the work to understand your feelings, your memories, and your patterns, manipulative questions bounce off. You may still feel the sting, but you won't absorb the poison. You start to recognize when someone's concern is actually a criticism, when just joking is actually passive aggression, when objectivity is actually deflection. You stop responding defensively and start standing calmly in your truth. You learn to say things like, I know what I felt. This matters to me, even if it doesn't to you. I'm not overthinking, I'm observing. These aren't comebacks, they're boundaries. And boundaries, Jung said, are essential to individuation. Without them, we merge with the projections of others. We become what they need us to be, instead of who we truly are. And most importantly, you don't owe emotional access to people who consistently undermine your reality. Not every question deserves an answer. Some questions are traps. They are designed to keep you explaining, defending, and proving while the manipulator stays in control of the conversation. Jung taught that silence, too, is a form of power, especially when used with discernment. You can walk away. You can say, that's not something I choose to engage with. You can choose yourself. So the next time someone asks you one of these questions, pause, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Ask yourself, is this person trying to understand me or trying to control me? Your answer will tell you everything you need to know. At the heart of all this, Carl Jung left us with one enduring truth. Self-awareness is your greatest defense. In a world full of manipulation disguised as conversation, the ability to recognize psychological games is a form of liberation. These questions, why are you so sensitive? Are you sure? Aren't you overthinking? Why make it about you? Can't you just move on? Are not always overt attacks. That's what makes them so dangerous. But once you learn the pattern, you can't unsee it. Jung believed that awakening is a lonely process at first, because once you see how often people communicate, not to connect, but to control, you begin to pull back. You stop oversharing. You stop over-explaining. You begin to protect your energy not with walls, but with clarity. And with that clarity comes a quiet confidence. You don't need to fight to be understood. You just need to understand yourself. The people who deserve your presence won't play these games. They won't question your sensitivity, shame your insight, or demand your silence. They'll hold space. They'll ask questions that deepen the connection, not distort it. You'll start to notice that your circle gets smaller, but your peace grows wider. That's not isolation, it's evolution. So if this message resonates with you, let it affirm your clarity. Let it validate your instinct to pause, to protect, to question what questions are really doing. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your awareness might just be the wake-up call someone else needs.